I am very delighted and excited this afternoon to welcome our property guru expert, which is John Lindeman. And John has been doing property research and has backed it up with winning predictions, which is the key, because most of them don't do that. And that's the difference, to deal with someone who really does understand and know how properties grow and change in Australia. So, John, I am delighted to welcome you and hear from you this afternoon, because there's such a lot happening, and we're just talking about the political landscape's changing. So I'm going to just hand over to you and you can fill people in on your history and how you came to be here.
Great. Thank you very much, Louise. And hi, everyone. It is great to be here. I'm going to talk about the truth about Australian property growth. I've been around a long time and studied the property market professionally for over 20 years. So I've done a lot of analysis. I've tried to make it as interesting as I can. Some people love stats, other people hate them, but they do tell you the truth. There's no sort of other way of looking at the market, I believe, other than looking at what the numbers are telling us. Now, also, if you have any questions at any time, I think probably the way to handle that is if you put them into the chat box, and you can see those, Louise.
Hi, John, no problem. I'll let you know.
If you think it's really urgent, let me know. Otherwise, there'll be time at the end if you have any questions to ask me. So a little bit about me. I studied trend analysis at the Bureau of Statistics for 5 years, and that's all about trending the sort of price of assets such as gold and commodities and shares, and being able to predict the future. And after that, I thought, well, hang on, if you can do that with all of those things, you should be able to do that with property as well. So I joined Residex. I was the head of research there for 5 years, at which I put all these theories I had into practice and discovered, yes, you can actually predict the future of the property market, be it good or bad, and you can do that down to suburb level. So I then set up my own company in 2010 called Property Power Partners. So that's been going over 15 years. And I also wrote 2 books on what I'd discovered, Mastering the Australian Housing Market. And both of these books were published by Wiley's. That first one was in 2010, the second one a few years later. And they've been landmark bestsellers for property investors because they explain not just how the market works, but how investors can get the best benefit. And the even better news is that if you go to your local library, you'll probably be able to pick up a copy of one of those. That the older one is probably a bit dog-eared, but I'm getting royalties from that still, not a lot, but it proves that it's still selling very, very well. I also, I do syndicated, thank you, syndicated columns with Alan Kohler and Kevin Turner and Michael Yardney. And I do lots of different podcasts and webinars and so on with pretty much all the property media in Australia. And I'm the go-to guy for a number of investor companies and mentorships and so on, such as the ones you see there. That one's the Wealth Club and Redmayne. So I'm pretty well sought after because of the amount of knowledge I've gleaned over the years. But the main thing I wanted to find out was how the property market actually worked. And also, don't leave before the end, because I'm going to give you my boom predictions. This is my prediction for the next capital city to boom in Australia.
Ooh, we're excited.
Excellent. Okay, so my story is, when I started, I thought I've really got to find out how the property market works. And I've read every single book I could find on the property market. You can see some of them there. And although they showed me a lot about the market, none of them could actually tell me how the property market worked. And then I thought, well, I need to know not just that, but also how investors can get the best benefit. So I went to workshops and boot camps and podcasts and webinars, whatever was available, to find out the answer to that question. How can investors get the most benefit? But again, I discovered that there were lots of hidden agendas, lots of people trying to flog property and not actually having your best interests at heart. So I thought, I've just got to do this myself. And so I went back and decided to study exactly how the property market works. Now, one of the ways I did this was by looking at the history of capital city house prices. So I'm one of the few people that's been able to do this. A lot of work. I had to go to the libraries and look at the facilities and actually gather the average capital city house price all the way from 1901 through to the present time. So that's the graph, the result of what I discovered. That's a logarithmic graph, so it actually shows the price movement, which in 1901 was about $700 pounds, which is $1,400 to buy a house in a capital city, and how it's moved all the way through until the present time. And then I looked at that and I thought, well, hang on, that is actually about 7% average annual growth. So if you average it right out over that whole period of time, and that's the orange line, it works out at about 7% annual growth. And that 7%, if you get 7% growth every year, it means that prices will double every 10 years. And you've probably heard a lot of people talking about this. House prices double every 10 years. And yes, they do over a long period of time. If you look at that whole history of Australian property price movements, yes, they did double every 10 years on average. And that's the important thing, because the growth has been very, very uneven. But that's led to this idea about time in the market, that all you have to do is buy a property and hang on to it for 10 years and it will double in value.